15th of December 2022. This Skidmark is one of those Warrafak moments, and I think this is something that are going to shock a few people. The reality is that Putin is a lawyer. He's a qualified lawyer. And he's a guy that is known for the fact that he has got a great respect for the law. And he wants things to be legal before he does it. Now, just a little bit of a background. The Minsk Agreement made provision for the regions of Lugansk and Donetsk to be independent but part of Ukraine, with self-determination for those two regions. And Putin has been trying to get them to implement the Minsk Agreement since 2014. And in the past week, Angela Merkel gave an interview to a magazine, and she made a statement that made a lot of people jump up straight when she said that the intention was never to implement the Minsk agreements, but it was only there to buy time to strengthen the Ukraine military. Now, Putin was extremely upset when that came out. And in a way, Merkel threw NATO and the collective West under the bus there. So, all the time, the Donbass people were asking Russia to help them to protect themselves against Ukraine, because the Ukraine army was bombing and bombarding Lugansk and Donetsk for 8 years. 14,000 people were killed there. But Putin never wanted to interfere physically there, because he was all the time pushing for the Minsk Agreement to be implemented. And then in November last year, it became clear that that Minsk Agreement was not going to be implemented. And Russia became aware of a tremendous build-up of forces by Ukraine military in the Donbass. And representatives from Donetsk and Lugansk came to Moscow and once again asked him to assist. And he said that he's got no legal way to assist them. And the only way that Russia could assist is that those two republics must declare independence, which they subsequently did, and incidentally North Korea was one of the first to recognize them. Now that was all that was needed. Just one country needed to recognize them for it to be within the framework of the UN Charter. So when that was done, they sent a formal request to Moscow to help them. Now the UN Charter makes provision for a country to jump in to defend a neighbor if that neighbor is attacked. Now things were legal for Russia, and the Duma approved it, and that was it. And that was when the forces were sent into the Donbass. But this week I saw a very interesting post, and I filed it, but tonight I was listening to a guy, and there was one party in the debate that was again making a statement that the Russian invasion was illegal. So, now I need you to concentrate a bit and take note. After the end of World War II, there was a meeting in Moscow where the United States was there, the USSR, the Soviet Union was there, and China was there, and Britain, the British, those four countries. They were seen as the winners of World War II, the victors of World War II. And there was an agreement signed Declaration of 4 nations on general security. At a conference held in Moscow from the 19th to the 30th of October 1943, the Foreign Secretaries of the United States of America, the United Kingdom, the Soviet Union, and China adopted the following joint declaration. The governments of the United States of America, the United Kingdom, the Soviet Union, and China, united in their determination in association with the declaration by the United Nations of January 1, 1942, and subsequent declarations to continue hostilities against those axes of powers with which they respectively are at war until such powers have laid down their arms on the basis of unconditional surrender, conscious of their responsibility to secure the liberation of themselves and the peoples allied with them from the menace of aggression. Take note, the menace of aggression. Recognizing the necessity of ensuring a rapid and orderly transition from war to peace and of establishing and maintaining international peace and security with the least diversion of the world's human and economic resources and armaments. Now, it says here, to continue hostilities against those axes of powers with which they respectively are at war. And that refers to the Nazis. Take note, that refers to the Nazis. Jointly declare that their united action pledged for the prosecution of war against their respective enemies will be continued for the organization and maintenance of peace and security will be continued. That those of them at war with a common enemy will act together in all matters relating to the surrender and disarmament of that enemy. 3. That they will take all measures deemed by them to be necessary to provide against any violation of the terms imposed upon the enemy. 4. That they recognize the necessity of establishing at the earliest practice date a general international organization based on the principle of the sovereign equality of all peace-loving states and open to membership of all such states, large and small, for the maintenance of international peace and security. That is referring to the UN. That for the purpose of maintaining international peace and security pending the re-establishment of law and order and the inauguration of a system of general security, they will consult with one another and, as occasion requires, with other members of the United Nations with a view to joint action on behalf of the community of nations. That after termination of hostilities, they will not employ their military forces within the territories of other states, except for the purpose envisaged in this declaration and after joint consultation. That they will confer and cooperate with one another and with other members of the United Nations to bring about a practicable general agreement with respect to the regulation of armaments and the post-war period. And this is referring to the Security Council. Now, so they have got that agreement that was signed by those 4 nations, which was considered the winners of World War II. And I'm going to read this again. To continue hostilities against those axes of powers with which they respectively are at war until such powers have laid down their arms on the basis of unconditional surrender. Once again, referring to the Nazis. And then I saw this interesting post. Articles 106 and 107 of the UN Charter gives Russia, as the legal successor to the victor of World War II, the right to take any action, including military ones, against Germany, Hungary, Austria, Romania, Bulgaria, Finland, Croatia, Slovenia, Czech Republic, Latvia, Estonia, Lithuania and Ukraine for attempts to revive Nazism. Take note. Those countries that has now been named there, and they are part of the EU now, and some of them part of NATO, and they are supporting Ukraine. And you can discuss it and explain it any which way you want. The Ukraine nationalists are Nazis. UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres was surprised to learn from Putin that there is an article in the UN Charter that allows a Russian special operation to be carried out in Ukraine. Russia has the right to punish Nazis anywhere according to the UN Charter and that Moscow Agreement. The Nuremberg Tribunal sentenced to criminal liability all those who fought against the United Nations and committed genocide. The greatest genocide was committed against the Soviet people. UN Charter Articles 106 and 107 gives the victors of World War II, the USSR, USA, Great Britain and China, the right to take action against the countries that fought against them, to prevent actions that aim to revise the results of the Second World War. In particular, the use of military force against those countries is permitted. To do this, you only need to notify the other three winning countries, but not get their consent. Russia, as the legal successor to the USSR, can also use force against states that want to overhaul the Yalta-Potsdam system in Europe. Russia can stop attempts to revive Nazism in Germany, Hungary, Romania, Austria, Bulgaria, Finland, Croatia, Slovenia, Czech Republic, which acted as the protectorate of Bohemia and Moravia during the war. So, this is something the mainstream media does not promote. They don't tell you about this. Nothing. I went and I looked at those two articles in the Charter, and in principle it is roughly the same as that Moscow Agreement. So Russia was right to take up arms against that Nazis in the Ukraine. Now, there is many debates about it and many stories about it, and I don't give a continental fuck about that stories. If you look at the images, if you look at the videos, those cretins are Nazis. I have shared many of the things. I mean, they promote killing all Russian babies, and they are mutilating bodies. They have displays. I mean, there's one guy that is now making jewelry from Russian soldiers' bones and selling it. What shit is that? Those people there are Nazis, and that's the end of the story. And Russia is entitled to act against them. The big problem here for the Europeans is that this agreement gives Russia the right to act against Germany, Hungary, Romania, Austria, Bulgaria, Finland, Croatia, Slovenia, and the Czech Republic, which acted as the protectorates of Bohemia and Moravia. So, everywhere in that European countries, there are signs of Nazis making a comeback. Something that you should keep in mind. And before you again say Russia invaded or was aggressive against Ukraine, make sure about your facts. And as I said earlier, Putin is a guy that is known to follow the law. And it was interesting that Guterres didn't even know about the existence of these articles. So think about that and keep it in mind. And when you want to fly that Ukraine flag, just remember, you are supporting Nazis. And on that ugly note, disturbing note, and for many people it might be a good note, I'm going to say good night on this one. As you can see, I'm sitting in the dark. There's no power here. My UPS is running and it's close to midnight, but I just felt that I had to do this skid mark. Russia was not wrong. Thank you for your support. Please give me a like and a subscribe, and have a great evening.